We're reading Chapter 3, The Torrance Tornado. It happened every Saturday. Louis would go to the track, limber up, lie on his stomach on the infield grass, visualizing his coming race, then walk to the line, await the pop of the gun, and spring away. Pete would dash back and forth in the infield, clicking his stopwatch, yelling encouragement and instructions. When Pete gave the signal, Louis would stretch out his long legs, and his opponents would scatter and drop away. In the words of a reporter, sadly disheartened and disillusioned. Louis would glide over the line. Pete would be there to tackle him, and the kids in the bleachers would cheer and stomp. Then there would be autograph-seeking girls coming in waves. A ride home, kisses from mother, and snapshots on the front lawn, trophy in hand. Louis won so many wristwatches, the traditional laurel of track, that he began handing them out all over town. Periodically, a golden boy would be touted as the one who would take him down, only to be run off his feet. One victim, wrote a reporter, had been hailed as the boy who doesn't know how fast he can run. He found out Saturday. Louis' supreme high school moment came in the 1934 Southern California Track and Field Championship, running in what was celebrated as the best field of high school milers in history. Louis routed them all and smoked the mile in 4 minutes, 21.3 seconds, shattering the national high school record set during World War I by more than 2 seconds. There's a footnote here, and I'm going to try to read the footnote. Louis' time was called a world interscholastic record, but this was a misnomer. There were no official world high school records. Later sources would list the time as 4 minutes, 21.2 seconds. But all sources from 1934 listed as 4 minutes, 21.3 seconds. Because different organizations had different standards for record verification, there is some confusion about whose record Louis broke. But according to the newspapers at the time, the previous record holder was Ed Shields, who ran 4 minutes, 23.6 seconds in 1916. In 1925, Chesley Unruh was timed at 4 minutes, 20.5 seconds, which is better. But this wasn't officially verified. Cunningham was also credited with the record, but his time, 4 minutes, 24.7 seconds, run in 1930 was far slower than that of Unruh and Shields. Louis' mark stood until Bob Seaman broke it in 1953. Now, I'm going to try to go back. Okay, I got it. His main rival so exhausted himself chasing Louis that he had to be carried from the track. As Louis trotted into Pete's arms, he felt a tug of regret. He felt too fresh. Had he run his second lap faster, he said he might have clocked 4 minutes and 18 seconds. A reporter predicted that Louis' record would stand for 20 years. It stood for 19. And here's a picture of Louis and Pete. Once his hometown's resident arch villain, Louis was now a superstar, and Torrance forgave him everything. When he trained, people lined the track fence, calling out, "Come on, Iron Man!" The sports pages of the Los Angeles Times and Examiner were striped with stories on the prodigy, whom the Times called the Torrance Tempest, and practically everyone else called the Torrance Tornado. By one report, stories on Louis were such an important source of revenue to to the Torrance Herald that the newspaper insured his legs for $50,000. Torrancers carpooled to his races and crammed the grandstands. Embarrassed by the fuss, Louis asked his parents not to watch him race. Louise came anyway, sneaking to the track to peer through the fence, but the races made her so nervous that she had to hide her eyes. Not long ago, Louis' aspirations had ended at whose kitchen he might burgle. Now he latched onto a wildly audacious goal, the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. The games had no mile race, so milers ran the 1,500 meters about 120 yards short of a mile. It was a seasoned man's game. Most top milers of the era peaked in their mid-20s or later. As of 1934, the Olympic 1,500-meter favorite was Glenn Cunningham, who'd set the world record in the mile for 4 minutes, 6.8 seconds. Just weeks after, Louis set the national high school record. Cunningham had been racing since the 4th grade, and at the 1936 games, he would be just short of 27. So that's a big difference in age. Louis was in high school, breaking the high school record, or making the high school record. He would be just short of 27. So Cunningham wouldn't run the fastest mile until he was 28. He wouldn't run his fastest mile until he was 28. As of 1936, Louis would have only 5 years' experience and would be only 19. But Louis was already the fastest high school miler in American history, and he was improving so rapidly that he had lopped 42 seconds off of his time in 2 years. His record mile, run when he was 17, was 3.5 seconds faster than Cunningham's fastest high school mile, run when he was 20. Oh, there's a footnote. Apparently, because of his burns, Cunningham didn't start high school until he was 18. Even conservative track pundits were beginning to think that Louis might be the one to shatter precedent, and after Louis won every race in his senior season, their confidence was strengthened. Louis believed he could do it, and so did Pete. Louis wanted to run in Berlin more than he had ever wanted anything. In December 1935, Louis graduated from high school. A few weeks later, he rang in 1936 with his thoughts full of Berlin. The Olympic trials track finals would be held in New York in July, and the Olympic Committee would base its selection of competitors on a series of qualifying races. Louis had 7 months to run himself onto the team. In the meantime, he also had to figure out what to do about the numerous college scholarships being offered to him. Pete had won a scholarship to the University of Southern California, where he had become one of the nation's top 10 college milers. He urged Louis to accept USC's offer, but delay entry until the fall so he could train full-time. So Louis moved into Pete's frat house and, with Pete coaching him, trained obsessively. All day, every day, he lived and breathed the 1,500 meters and Berlin. In the spring, he began to realize he wasn't going to make it. Though he was getting faster by the day, he couldn't force his body to improve quickly enough to catch his older rivals by summer. He was simply too young. He was heartbroken. In May, Louis was leafing through a newspaper when he saw a story on the Compton Open, a prestigious track meet to be held at the Los Angeles Coliseum on May 22nd. The headliner in the 5,000 meters, 3 miles and 188 yards, was Norman Bright, a 26-year-old schoolteacher. Bright had set the American 2-mile record in 1935 and was America's second fastest 5,000-meter man. Excuse me. Behind the legendary Don Lash, Indiana University's 23-year-old record-smashing machine. America would send 3 5,000-meter men to Berlin, and Lash and Bright were considered locks. Pete urged Louis to enter the Compton Open and try his legs at a longer distance. If you stay with Norman Bright, he told Louis, you make the Olympic team. The idea was a stretch. The mile was 4 laps of the track. The 5,000 was more than 12. What Louis would describe as a 15-minute torture chamber, well over 3 times his optimal distance. He had only twice raced beyond a mile, and the 5,000, like the mile, was dominated by much older men. He had only 2 weeks to train for Compton, and with the Olympic trials in July, 2 months to become America's youngest elite 5,000-meter man. But he had nothing to lose. He trained so hard that he rubbed the skin right off his toes, one of his toes, leaving his sock bloody. Oh my. The race, contested before 10,000 fans, was a barn burner. Louis and Bright took off together, leaving the field far behind. Each time one took the lead, the other would gun past him again, and the crowd would roar. They turned into the home stretch for the last time, dead together, Bright inside, Louis outside. Ahead, a runner named John Casey was on the verge of being lapped. Officials waved at Casey, who tried to yield, but Bright and Louis came to him before he could get out of the way. Bright squeezed through on the inside, but Louis had to shift right to go around Casey. Confused, Casey veered farther right, carrying Louis out. Louis sped up to go around him, but Casey sped up also, carrying Louis most of the way toward the grandstand. Finally, Louis took a half a step to cut inside, lost his balance, and dropped one hand to the ground. Bright now had an advantage that looked to Pete's eyes to be several yards. Louis took off after him, gaining rapidly. With the crowd on its feet and screaming, Louis caught Bright at the tape. He was a beat too late. Bright won by a glimmer. He and Louis had clipped out the fastest 5,000 run in America in 1936. Louis' Olympic dream was on again. Oh goodness, I thought with a little bit of a trip that he was out of it. On June 13th, Louis made quick work of another Olympic 5,000 qualifier, but the toe injured in training opened up again. He was too lame to train for his final qualifying race, and it cost him. Bright beat Louis by 4 yards, but Louis wasn't disgraced, clocking the 3rd fastest 5,000 run in America since 1931. He was invited to